Downtown. I understand that's owned by the Allen Company out of Granite City, Illinois. I understand the city is trying to collect $244,000 for cleaning the debris up. But right now, it's a prime location if the city would build a 2-story, maybe even a 3-story building there. The first floor would be all for commercial businesses. The next floor would be for office space or apartments. And then you rent all that space out on the second and third floor. What's that going to do? That's going to bring enough income in to pay for that whole building. Now, if you had something on that first floor that would attract them tourists to come in and they would spend 2 or 3 hours in there, maybe it's a combination of Route 66 Museum, the Historical Society, the Genealogical Society. But something that would people, let's go to Lebanon today. I don't know how many people here get up on Saturday morning and say, well, let's drive to Kansas City today. Let's go to St. Louis. That's great. But how many people there say, let's get up and go to Lebanon today? What are we going to do to bring that in? Well, dear Lynn Stowe, probably a lot of you know Lynn Stowe, Lynn told me the other day, you need to go talk to Rebecca. Well, I ain't got up there yet, but yeah, if we can talk to Rebecca and to Brian Thompson and all these other guys, and the city could get together. Now, they don't own the land, but maybe they could work a deal out where if the Allen Company or investors would give the city that so they don't have to pay the $244,000, that would be a great start to do something like that. And where would it be? Right on Commercial Street, where we don't hardly have an open business or a building anymore. Most everything on there is full. So that's my idea. What can we do? Can we do that? Can we get enough people on the city council involved? Is this something we can look at? Is this something we can do to do what I'm saying? Bring the tourists in, build the building, and now it's interesting too. Shannon Embler at the ice cream factory just got a historical. He's applied to get on the historical registry. That's not completely, but that company that did that for him is a multi-billion-dollar company. That Parker Enterprises or whatever it is, look them guys up. Now, why did they come in here and do that? I mean, they build shopping centers. They build huge malls. Just look them up on the internet. So how did they decide to come in here and help Shannon out on the old dairy building? Is that something that they might be involved in? The other thing, Adam Dial, again, with the State Historic Preservation Office, has already surveyed a lot of this downtown area, saying it needs to be a historical district. Now, that's what I was going to ask Sarah about tonight, because I know she went to Jeff City and talked to Missouri Main Street Association. But are they also looking at making that a historical district, or have we even thought about that? And that's where we could come in. We could help go to these businesses and see if we could get them on the historic register. That would be the first stop. How do we get Mel's on the historic register? They're not on there. Well, no, I think Mel's is.
Mel's is.
Joe
The
only one now.
Yeah. Jim, even though his building was there in
20 something.
No, he told me it was before the Civil War.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he said it was like right before, like 59 or something like that. And then had been a variety of different shops. One was a tin maker. He made like tin pots and pans and stuff like that. But I gave him all that stuff from Jeff City, and he was all excited. And what his complaint was, well, they're going to give me this money, but I got to do this work. And I'm going, wait a minute, don't you run a business? So there's always people that don't just say, look, I've been with Main Street USA. I've heard all the complaints. Same thing with Jeff City. Oh, we'll never be able to sell the building. If we paint it this color that they told us to, we'll never be able to paint it again. And there's all kinds of problems that people that are misnomers. They're not true. And Main Street USA, I've listened to people before saying, oh, I'll never be able to change the shutter color on here. I'm going, dude, what?
But the other thing is they also identified one more place to be on a historical district, and that's out on Route 66. That's out there by Taco John's, I think it is, and then Rinks Market.
Rinks Market, yeah.
That's all been done. Now, they said we'd have to do an architectural survey that would have to be completed, and I don't know what that would cost. I don't know, but they said they would pay up to 60% of that. We could get grant money to pay 60% of it. So that's something we, would have to be looked into. What does it cost to have a architectural survey done? And actually how many buildings would be done, because they're not all historic.
And Dairy Joe's been there since what, 29 or 39?
I don't know, it's old.
It's old. It's like around World War II. I was like, yeah, we'll put you a new neon sign up there with a big ice cream cone.
But there's one other thing, I heard a rumor. Now, I heard a rumor that the Pocket Park was sold by the city, but somehow Sarah, 28 minutes after I heard that today, is saying, look how our Pocket Park's going. So I'm going to leave it up to you.
You can tell the truth.
I'm going to let her talk a while, and I'm going to sit down.
Well, I have a presentation of some stuff that I'm going to go through, but I'll address a couple of, this will work. So, we have looked into the possibility of doing a historic district. And so basically we would draw the boundaries and look at it and say which buildings are contributing to that and which aren't. Only the ones that contribute to the historic district would be able to get federal funding for their buildings and stuff like that. And there needs to be a certain percentage of the entire district that is contributing buildings. Like you guys were talking about, the part of it is a communications issue with the building owners. To be able to say it's still your building, you can still do whatever you want with it. You're not agreeing to anything by being part of this district. You're not being hamstrung or anything like that. But a lot of people are afraid they are. Now, if you receive federal money on certain things, then yes, you have to agree to keep it that way for so many years and all those things. But it does scare people. So until we know for sure exactly what that district would be and what buildings contribute, we haven't really moved forward with that yet. But when we do, we would need some help with research. The Pocket Park, so that was where Cardin's used to be. So that lot was owned by what's now First State Community Bank. And they were using it for repossessed cars, putting them out there. And then when they stopped doing that and stopped using it, they decided that they would donate it to the city with the assumption that they'd make it into some type of public gathering place. So it's still owned by the city. We just hadn't done any work on it in a while. Plans had kind of fallen behind because of the new sim lab and some other things that road work that we got grants for, that a lot of money needed to be spent and a lot of effort needed to be put on that. And then we lost our city administrator and, a whole bunch of stuff happened. But things are moving quickly and we're hoping it will be done by the end of 2025 for sure. We're hoping in enough time to get some of our downtown concert series in that Pocket Park. And then as far as the Allen Building site, it's still up in the air. There was already a court case where the city was suing the developer because they had sold them the lot for $10 with the agreement that within 3 years they would have it renovated and redone. And that didn't happen. So the city was suing them when it burned down. So the case is still ongoing, but there has been some negotiations where the city has made some offers as far as like if the trustees of the city can get the property back, maybe waiving the fees and the insurance payment. So the city attorney has not been allowed to speak publicly about it. So I've asked him, and he just said things are going well. So that's all I know. But there have been discussions with some developers. about the potential of doing a mixed use, bottom floor, retail, maybe second story residential, office space kind of thing. So your ideas are genius because they're what other people think too. So that's kind of the plan. And part for me, downtown, what will take us to the next level and bring us kind of back to where it used to be is having that residential downtown. I live downtown in a loft apartment. Matt Starnes, who owns Jude's, also lives downtown. There's an apartment above Triumph, and then at Larry's Barbershop and the Angie Hemphill, there's 3 apartments up there. So there are some of us that live downtown. I think it's like 6 or 7 apartments, and more are coming. But it's a slow process, but if we can have more people living downtown, it just generates more activity and all of that stuff. So we're very excited about that. That's the next step. But the presentation that I had, that you guys can't see, but I'll tell you what's on it, is really about kind of where we are, what we've been doing, and our plans for the future, just generally so that you understand how downtown works. It's confusing because there's so many different hands in the pot, but we all try to work together basically to revitalize the historic commercial district. And I'm sure you guys all know the history of how Lebanon started, or what we call Old Town now, in 1849. 2 families actually donated the land for that, and the courthouse was built, and all of those great things. And then when the railroad wanted to come through, the city basically said, no, we don't want that coming through our town. So they put the railroad outside of town, and within a couple of years, the town moved to be close to the railroad. So the city and the county were formed, officially the county and pretty much officially the city, in 1849. But everything moved to downtown that is now in 1869. So our logo says 1869. And the old city hall that was recently lost, that's why it was there. But the original courthouse was where Main Street and Cherry Street and all of that are in what we now call Old Town. All right. So the idea of downtown in general is that we're revitalizing the heart of our community. So historically, downtown is the heart of the community because that's where people lived and worked. And, when they came to town on their horses, that's where they went, was downtown. But with the advent of cars and all of that, things have kind of spread out. So we're trying to bring it back. As of the last business inventory, we had 133 businesses downtown and 495 employees. So it's actually, taken all together, a pretty big business for our community. There are 2 organizations that work hand in hand to revitalize downtown, and we just call it Downtown Lebanon. But one is Lebanon, Missouri Main Street, and it is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that takes donations and raises money and has a board and all of those things that leads the way in the direction that downtown should go. There are also almost 50 volunteers who volunteer on a monthly basis to do all the things that we do downtown. I'm the only person who gets paid as the executive director, and everyone else is a volunteer. And then we work with the city through the Downtown Business District, which is an official subdivision of the city. It has boundaries. There is a board that makes decisions about that, but they're 2 separate things. One is governmental and one is nonprofit, but they work together to do all the great things that you see in downtown. There's a board of directors for Lebanon, Missouri Main Street, and then 4 standing committees, and then we've got a couple of new committees under those. So we have an economic vitality committee whose job is to inventory the businesses and talk to the businesses and what do we need to do to make business better and bring in new and exciting businesses that people want, finding out what it is that people want. Promotion committee does the events and advertising. The organization committee focuses on the structure and raising money. And then we've got the design committee that focuses on what things look like and the banners and the plants and all those great things. We started an art committee about 4 months ago. Mr. Adams is on that. So we're already working on identifying places where we can put new art, funding for that art, artists for that art. We're inventorying the art we do have. We do have a lot of great art downtown, but we don't really advertise it or talk about it or know much of the history of it. So we're working on all those things too. And then we have special committees for each of the big events, like Christmas on Commercial is huge. I definitely cannot do that by myself. So we have like subcommittees that work on all of those things. One of our biggest things is historic preservation. So we've got grants that we offer to our building owners to redo their facades, to preserve them, or take them back to the way they used to be. There was some kind of weird trend in the 70s and 80s to just cover it all up and make it hideous. I mean, if you've ever found hardwood floors under shag carpet, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We shared a picture, I think, we'll wheel tomorrow, of the Norman's Bridal building when it had those weird gold bubble things all over the front of it. And it's been really interesting to see that come off and then the plaster underneath. And that building owner has just received another grant from us to remove all that plaster so that it's just going to be a 3-story brick building downtown. So I'm very excited about that. But bringing it back to the way it used to look, right? Two Guys Music, down on the second block of West Commercial, it's covered in plaster. They received a grant to remove the plaster, so it's going back to brick. So we want, when you come through downtown, to feel what it was like in 1869. Now, all of it can't still be there, obviously. The Queen Hotel burned down. That's why there's a kind of ugly building there on the corner. But anything we can do to get, awnings removed and things taken back to the way it used to be, that's what we're trying to do. And with our grant process, they're small grants. They're matching grants. We only do up to 50%. But that's a lot. 50% will cover half of it. But we want you to go back to the windows the way they used to be. A lot of people just board it up and cut a hole and put a modern window in because it's expensive, right? So we're trying to help that. And downtown's idea was to get it started, to get the ball rolling. And what's happening now is business owners and property owners are starting to see the value in just investing in that on their own without the grants. Because their building is worth more and it looks better and it fits and the rents can go up if it's back to, its historic, I don't know what the word is, glory, I guess. Back to its glory days. So we do that to try to preserve the history. We do research about buildings when we can. We recently partnered with Eric Tudor to have him do a Throwback Thursday thing on Facebook for us. So every Thursday we're going to have some kind of history of downtown or a building downtown or something. So he's working on that for us. We also try to build that energy in the community with an interest in historic preservation, because I'm sure you guys all know when nobody shows up to meetings and nobody cares, that's when buildings get torn down, right? And so we're trying to make sure the community's fired up before the building gets torn down, not after, right? And the only way to do that is to just make it cool and fun and interesting, and that's part of what we're doing on social media. And then also we are trying to, as a group, push the direction of the entire downtown community. If we wanted to focus on it being modern and hip and all of that, then that's where it would go, and there'd be glass metal buildings everywhere. But we are trying to push all of our owners, all of our customers, everybody to want that historic preservation aspect. So it's a big part of what we do with downtown. It's always there in the background, but it's a slow roll getting people to care about the history or even know what it is. I mean, people ask me still all the time, why does it say 1869 on there? And then we have to explain it, and we talk about the railroad. And it's really neat to actually sometimes walk, since I live downtown, to hear the train, the building shakes a little bit, and you're like, this is exactly what somebody experienced 100 years ago, right? It's really cool. So this is a little outdated, but we had, at the end of last year, given out 34 facade improvement grants, a little over $103,000, but we're now up to $146,000 that we've given out in matching grants for the facades. Looking toward the future, what we want to do is like a self-guided walking tour where if you see a building that you're interested in, you can scan a QR code and they'll tell you a little bit about what's the history of that building, what was it, and then you can imagine the doctors going in and all of that great stuff. So, but as you can imagine, big project, and we've got a lot going on, but it's on the list. Beautification is a big part of what we do. Even just 10 years ago, there were regular stop signs and regular lamp posts and that kind of thing downtown. Now we've got the fancy lamp posts with the banners and the flower baskets and different street signs downtown just to give it that feel. So that's part of what downtown does and advocates for with the city. We want it to be functional, clean, and pleasing. So we try. We pay through the Downtown Business Districts Fund, which does take a small tax levy on property, and it goes to the Downtown Business District Fund with the city. They pay Laclede Industries to do extra trash collection and pickup and weed removal and things like that that they don't do in the rest of the city. So we get all the basic same services everybody else does, but anything extra we want downtown, somebody has to pay for it. So that's one of the things that tax levy on the property tax goes to. For the future, we're looking at updating the banners and the baskets, and also the pocket park is coming. It's not going to have playground equipment or anything like that. It's more of a community gathering space for art and music and just the community being able to get together and experience culture. So that's the plan on that. We're still working on it.
A stage or any?
There will be a stage in the back, a covered stage. There will be bathrooms, and there is a giant 200-foot wall that art will go on of some sort. Yeah, so it's going to be great. Economic vitality, like I said, really focuses on supporting the businesses, encouraging new businesses. I don't know if you guys heard about the 229 project, but that was one of the great things that has come out of this downtown revitalization is a property owner saying, actually what he said is, I want a bakery here. How do I get a bakery here? And then it's like, well, let's do a contest. Maybe I don't want a bakery. We just want something that foot traffic will go into, right? 67 small businesses applied to be in that space. So we have a lot of entrepreneurs around here, and downtown is a great incubator for new businesses and small businesses. You probably can't see this, but this is a representation of the taxable sales in downtown Lebanon. This is, I think, 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19 was the first year they hired an executive director. 20, I don't know, I remember, 21, 22, 23, but this is 23. So you can see that since they hired an executive director, taxable sales in downtown has doubled. So this represents about $5 million in taxable sales, and this represents about 10. So in just 4 years, putting a focus on downtown has increased revenues, which is good for everybody, but that's just taxable sales. There's a lot, Falcon Floor Covering, most of their sales aren't taxable. Page Office Supply, most of their sales are not taxable. So there's a lot of activity economically happening downtown. But this represents money actually going to the city to pay for all the great things that we all get here in our community. We do have like a little video series we're starting for businesses to help them do better with the downtown environment. The 229 project I talked about, and then we recently got a subscription to Placer AI, which is extremely expensive, but it is a visitor statistics study, and it goes back to 2017. We can geofence off the downtown area and look at any day, any time, look at where people came from, where they went. Visits last year, for the calendar year, in downtown were almost 700,000. 700,000 people were in downtown Lebanon. It's just, and some of them are same person came back every day, right? But that's visits over 10 minutes, so it doesn't count people driving down Jefferson. But it's really neat to look at our events. Christmas on Commercial had 7,000 people. That's just, can you imagine, right? The opening day of trout season last year was a Friday, and it was also First Friday. There were 4,000 people downtown for that. Right? It's just wild. So, but look, being able to see those numbers can tell us what we should be doing, right? This year, opening day of trout season is on Saturday, and the next week is First Friday. So we're throwing an event and calling it Hooked on Lebanon, and we're going to have all kinds of fun outdoorsy stuff happening downtown to bring those people from Bennett. 2 million people a year visit Bennett Springs State Park, right? Opening day, there's thousands of people down there. We want them to come to Lebanon and spend their money with us, eat our food, see our art, our culture, our live music. So that also brings in that money that then we can use to revitalize and do more. Promotion committee, you guys know all about the events and what we do. Christmas on Commercial is our biggest one. There were 7,000 people downtown for that. We did work with you guys and several other organizations for the Cackle Hatchery Chicken Festival last year. We weren't really sure what to call it, so we called our part Fall Kickoff. And we had a concert the Friday night. We had concerts going on during the day Saturday. Over those 2 days, 7.8 thousand people in downtown Lebanon, right? So this year, we're calling it Cackle Days, and we're just going to have Cackle Days in downtown. So it's going to be absolutely fantastic. We're super excited. Lots more chicken-themed stuff. There's talk of having all the local restaurants come down for a chicken wing competition. Who makes the best chicken wings? We're going to have egg spoon races, and just, it'll be kind of like Hillbilly Days, but not hillbillies, chickens, right? So part of what we learned from Missouri Main Street was you don't have to be like anybody else. Embrace who you are as a community and just really polish that up and make it shine. We have in downtown, the longest continuously operating business is Cackle Hatchery, right? They opened in 1936. They're in the same place. They've expanded quite a bit. There used to be a hobby hatchery in every community where you could go buy your chickens and fowl and all that. There's only 9 left in the country, and Cackle Hatchery is the largest one. They ship all over the United States. Let's embrace that, right? It's amazing. So, and I posted a TikTok about Cackle Hatchery on their opening hatch day, and it has like 35,000 views on TikTok and 20,000 views on Facebook. People love it.
Angst,
So-
keep going up, we're going to be real popular.
Exactly. Everybody wants their own chickens during the pandemic and now. Yeah, inflation and yeah. This is a list of all of our events for the year, but the general idea is we do First Fridays every Friday. During the summer, we have a concert series that goes along with that. We try to get just regional bands, mostly cover bands, but some are, they do their own music. Dawson Hollow played last year. They are local. They're amazing. They're nationally getting a little more famous as time goes on, but it's Rachel Starnes, who owns Cafe June's with her husband Matt and her brothers. So it's super neat. And then we have the Cruise in June, Father's Day weekend. We do a summer kickoff foam party for the kids on the first weekend that school's out. We do the Mayor's Christmas tree lighting. We do Trick or Treat on Commercial Street, which I didn't hardly advertise this year. There were 6,000 people downtown for that. And that's probably not including children who don't have cell phones. So anyway, people love downtown. They love feeling that community. They love seeing people. They love the idea of the Sesame Street vibe, right? That's what we're trying to give them. And believe me, this part keeps me very busy. It feels like there's something going on every weekend, but it is really great to look down Commercial Street and see it just full of cars. And the back lots too. It's really neat. If you haven't been on a Friday night, just drive through and look. And then we had somebody design up like a little rendering of the arches, and I use that a lot. But really, it is a concerted effort between volunteers from downtown, people who own buildings, people who run businesses, people who work at those businesses downtown, people who live downtown, the city, tourism, regional economic development. Everybody in our community knows that the heartbeat of your community is the downtown. And we want to preserve the history. We want to bring the people. We want it to be alive. We want, when a business is considering whether or not they want to move to Lebanon and bring their whole factory or whatever it is, we want them to drive through and see, oh yeah, we could get engineers to come to this community because look how cool it is. Or we could get doctors to come down here because look how cool it is. We are like advertising for our whole town, right? In the downtown. So, I love my job. I love what I do. I've got a lot of energy and passion for it. The history part is my favorite part, though I don't really get to spend much time doing that anymore because I'm mostly working on events. But we're trying really hard to build relationships with people who are interested in doing that and can do it, like Eric Tudor, who's been working on that for us, even while he's out of town. So, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have about anything. I could talk about downtown all day long. Yeah, go ahead.
I got one you need to probably just explain it to everybody.
Okay.
And it has to do with downtown
Okay.
businesses.
Okay.
The businesses that you have downtown are not so conducive to, there's nail and hair salons.
Yes.
And there's a tattoo parlor and there's a porn thing.
Well, it's gone. That's gone.
Oh, that's gone.
Okay.
But people need to understand, and maybe you can explain it. How do you get? You're not really directing it to the vendor that's on the street. You're more directing it to the owner of the building that you or that shop. This is what we can do from you. Do you have an organization? Do you guys bring all the owners of the buildings in? Because really, they're the ones that are going to change the window, change the paint.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, they're not.
Well, just like with anything, it's like herding cats to try to get everybody of any group to do anything, okay? Some people are totally disengaged and they don't care. Some people own buildings and they don't even live here.
Even when you leave money in front of their face?
Yes. And then there are others who just, they want to get involved and do whatever and learn everything they can. Business mix is important. Part of the struggle, and it's been changing, obviously, downtown, but for a very long time, downtown was the cheapest place to rent anything.
Yeah.
I mean, for $200, you could have a open door and start your business, right? So until that, and it has changed a lot, but it's still, rents still in downtown are lower than everywhere else. As that continues to change, then it doesn't really become feasible for somebody to have a business that doesn't make a lot of money to be there. They need to go somewhere else. So that'll change on its own. We can't tell a person who owns their building they can't have their hair salon there. I mean, that's not
Right.
right. But
you can do incentives, or the city can do
yes,
incentives.
and the building owners are starting to. The incentive in and of itself now is, whew, I got a good spot. Look at all the foot traffic coming to Boat Town and going over to Jude's. I need something here that will benefit from the foot traffic, not a lawyer, right? Not that we don't like lawyers, but yeah. Yeah.
The rail, is it still closed?
So, yes. And I've been asked the question a lot. I don't know what's going on. I do know they decided to close, but there's been talk about it not being permanent.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I am not privy to any other information than you
I'm just
are.
thinking we need more, food.
Yes. And
Restaurants.
part of the saving grace on that is that Carmen's Deli
Yeah.
is going to be opening very soon.
Yeah,
And so that'll be an additional restaurant, because West Side Cafe closed,
yeah.
now the rail closed.
So you really only have Boat Town down there, right?
Mills.
Well, there's Mills,
Mills,
Boat
yeah.
Town,
Yeah.
Jude's serves
Jude's,
food,
yeah.
and they're expanding their hours on that. And then on the other side, we've got the lunchbox.
Mhm.
And Covell does some bakery items and stuff like that. But as far as just like sit down to have a meal,
Yeah, I just hated to see.
Are
the
there
rail
any
closed.
incentives from the city to get businesses to come in?
there's no incentives from the city
Okay.
to do anything downtown really, in general. But things like our facade grants and things like that encourage people who want to be downtown and want to do historic preservation and want to have foot traffic. It encourages them to buy buildings and invest in their buildings. And then as we build this community and the ball gets rolling on its own, the hope is that, and we're already, I pass on grant opportunities to people. Like, hey, there's this grant for second-story apartments, and okay, I'll build an apartment, So it's a lot of, right now, just encouraging stuff and just trying to help make it a little easier, but there are no financial incentives as of yet. But that's an option.
Has Main Street USA, and I don't know if they do it anymore, they used to come and try to get all the businesses, in one area, like historic, route or whatever, and they would sit them down and say, here's the misnomers, okay?
Right,
And here's the truth.
right.
Do they still do that?
They will, yes. We need to know from our perspective, like our long-range plan, what is it that we want them to know? What information are we trying to combat right now? And we, I feel like, have a good enough group of people who live, work downtown, are part of the volunteer organization, that those conversations happen. Jim has told me some stuff that I was like, none of that is true, Jim. Let's have a conversation about this.
Yeah.
And then he goes and tells other people, and so a lot of that is resolving on its own, but if there was some big problem, we would definitely get a group together and do that, yeah.
During the 2040 program that the city was trying to do economic development for the long range, we talked about making our city more pedestrian friendly, sidewalks, bike trails. Has there been anything come of that?
There has been, not with downtown, but in other areas, yes, there are trails that they've got planned. I'm not so sure about the bike friendliness, not as like with the roads, but
Sure.
trails and parks and
Yeah.
things that connect parks to each other.
Nice.
There's some really, really cool plans for that, which is exciting. Downtown is hoping for the future to do some upgrades on the sidewalks. They're old and they all need
Sure.
major renovations. It's going to be a humongous
Yeah,
project.
but connecting other parts of the town to downtown would be helpful.
Yes.
And like, okay, well, if you're downtown, you could go to a local park easily, and,
Yeah.
or vice versa. If you're at the park, you can come to
Easily
downtown.
come to downtown. Yeah,
E-bike trails from one place to another.
that'd be great.
Down there across from Noble Hudson, there's one building that's, I think it's got house wrap on it. Looks like it's been there forever. What's the deal with that?
As far as I'm aware, it's owned by somebody who is in no hurry to finish.
Evidently.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes that whole block. look
I know.
bad.
But again, when it's like, what's the difference if I finish it or not? It's, not really worth anything. But if it's the point where, I mean, not that that's how people feel.
Yeah.
But when it gets to the point where you could get $2,000 a month in rent,
Mm.
you're finishing that building. But we're not there right now. I mean, I don't know what that would rent for, but, somewhere between 500 and 1,500 is the most, for a place downtown. So we just have to keep doing what we're doing and bring more people, and that stuff will happen on its own. People will invest on their own.
What's your vision of timeline that you're trying to make it? Because I know that's what Main Street, that's the first thing they ask.
It'll go on forever.
Yeah, it can go off. Do you want it 1960s or do you want 1949?
It's going to have to be a combination of all of it, because our buildings range from the 1850s to the
Or down.
1980s.
Yeah.
So trying to get the vibe of all of that together is going to happen. But the vibe of the 1860s is the kind of time frame we're looking at with a modern touch. Yeah.
There's no 1860s building down there, is there?
Well, didn't you just say that Jim's
That's
building was before the Civil War?
Jim's the only one I know of.
Right. And then
I used to think the flower
Math.
shop was
The
not
flower shop, isn't it?
it's like 1880s.
80.
Both of those buildings, Jude's,
Mhm.
the one right beside it, the one at the corner, that whole strip is like 1880s. The H&R Block, what's under there was 1880s.
Yeah, H&R, that's what.
I mean, and First State Community Bank under there is 1880s. Yeah,
So-
the basement is definitely 1880s.
You'd have to get all those 1880s people together and say, here's your grants, we'll give you this much money, okay, go away.
Right.
Now we're gonna go 1960s, here's your money, come here, let's tell you what you.
Well, and my biggest dream is to remove all that metal from Falcon floor covering and turn all of that back into a
You
theater.
hear that, Eric Tudor?
Yeah, right?
I'll tell you.
That would be my dream.
In the 60s, we had a courthouse that we'd been there since before the Civil War. And this is my hometown back in North Carolina. And they're the ones that put all the little plaques all over the street
Right.
that said, this happened, and this guy was killed here, or whatever.
Right.
They tried to put aluminum siding on a courthouse that was 1840.
Oh,
Gosh.
And the people, it was like toothpicks, not toothpicks, but
Pitchforks.
pitchforks and torches. Yeah, little guys out there. And they came out there and they were like, are you crazy?
Yeah, you can't do that.
And they were like, they turned it and the county or the city said, yeah, that's probably not a good idea.
No, probably not.
I mean, we were just testing you.
Right. All right, did you have a question?
Well, this is kind of a stupid question, but,
There are no stupid questions.
well, how run down does a building close to downtown have to be before the city will come and say something to them? Are they at the same standards as a neighborhood?
Yes.
Or-
Well,
or
they're the
whatever.
same standards as the rest of the city.
I mean, I'm looking at Wayner's, when they tore down Wayner's,
Right.
I mean, I guess it was structurally just shot, I guess.
Yes.
That's what I hear.
Yes.
But.
And I wasn't here during that. I mean, I was here, but I wasn't in the middle. But yeah.
Yeah, he just asked the question about that one building, I mean, how far run down does a downtown, especially that doesn't have any occupancy in it or anything, how far run down do they have to be before the city steps in and says something to them?
held back by the same as they are everybody else. Think about the Allen building.
Mhm.
Okay, they had violated every code you can think of, and they were getting fines and fines and fines and fines and doing nothing
Were they
about
paying
it. No. But the city can't just take your property from you. I mean, everybody'd be up in arms if you did that, right? So that's why they sued them. And it was like, you have to resolve these issues. I mean, people are living in there. They're breaking in. There are animals living and pooping all over the sidewalk. Like, it's not safe. But the city can't just eminent domain your property unless it is a serious problem. So it really depends on code enforcement and the codes and all that. So,
What about that building behind your building that got tore down? It was green block.
oh, yeah.
That one, that was a shame.
I know, but that was, the owners did that. But no one told them to. They've been wanting to do it for years. And my understanding is that they have plans for that will recreationally it's the church that owns it.
Oh,
And they're gonna use it as like a kid's,
okay.
that's what I understand, I don't know for
So
sure.
you can tear down your own building without permission from the city?
Oh, they had to get a permit,
Oh, they had to get a permit.
but it wasn't like the city said it's dangerous, tear it down. They just were like, we don't want it anymore, and, I mean, they could tear their own building down, I mean, they just have to have a permit, and usually they give you that. I mean, so, yeah.
This is just a curiosity, but there's a building that's up from Covell's
Okay,
on that same side.
This is part
I
of the
think
dairy.
it's brick. No, no. It seems to be residential.
okay, it's a two-story with big
Yeah.
windows. Okay, so that was the old, it used to be a newspaper office, it used to be a radio station. It was a salon in the first floor for a little while, but anyway, that's been purchased by LifePoint, and they are going to be using that as like a meeting center. I think they are going to keep like a studio upstairs where you could record, I don't know. But LifePoint owns it. There's a really cool alley right beside it that I want to do some art in.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but they are looking to preserve it.
Life Point is,
A church, LifePoint Lebanon. They also have the church right behind there, and they have a food pantry that faces Adams. So they've got multiple properties
but
in
it
downtown.
can't be a church, can it? Downtown.
It would just have to be approved if it was a church, but yeah. I mean, it just has to go
Because
through
there was
code.
an issue at one point with the church up there, or
The
there
cowboy.
was a church up,
Yes,
Cowboy Church.
yes. But that's because of the location. I wasn't here for that, so I'm not entirely sure, but I think it's because there's rules about like selling alcohol and those kinds of things within a certain, like 300-foot radius of a church.
Mhm.
So that would be a problem, just plopping one somewhere downtown. LifePoint already has a giant area that's technically not in downtown. So then buying an adjacent building doesn't really expand their footprint a lot. So nobody in downtown really thought it was going to be a problem. So,
There's only two churches that on the main, on commercial, I think. It would be that one and the one, but no, it's not one. There's only one.
well, there's Cross Creek,
Cross
which is
Creek.
not in downtown, but it's close enough that somebody right on 2nd Street there
Second Street.
would have to get some kind of variance in order to sell alcohol right there.
Right.
And then LifePoint are the only two that I'm aware of that touch
And
downtown.
that's two of. how
I
many
guess
churches?
Right?
I feel like Covell's is a commercial business. She does. I feel like if that's a church, and believe me, I'm as Christian as Christians come. So it's not that. It just kind of isolates her.
Right.
And it is on the main street.
That's true. But there's a giant lot that has lots of possibilities right there by her. So
Yeah.
I think pretty soon people are going to wish they had her building.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, within the next few years, they're going to wish they were on the east side.
That's
Yeah.
good.
So, and that's always a problem, like the east siders versus the west siders. Part of the problem is that Jefferson is just so busy and all the semis and all of that. I walk around downtown all the time. I mean, I walk to the post office to get my mail. It's kind of scary, you know?
Yeah.
Honestly, part of me wouldn't mind a flyover because who's going to use it? All those semis and the people who are just not going to stop anyway. It would make it safer for the rest of us. So, and then hopefully they want to come stop in downtown Lebanon, so they pull off. Yeah.
So is the farmer's market part of downtown?
The farmer's market is now part of downtown.
That's cool.
We expanded last year in May. So We've added the Governor's Quarters, which is attached to the market area, June and Beyond Boutique, and an alley, and then the market. So that's part of downtown. Oh, and also the parking lot beside MFA, right at the railroad tracks. That's a public lot, and so now it's part of downtown. And on the other side, back behind U.S. Bank, the Mason's Lodge and the Shrine Building, and then the parking lot beside Madison Manor are now in downtown. Interestingly, the Mason's Lodge, it's a beautiful brick building under there that has white siding all over it. They are going to remove that, and it's going to be a beautiful brick building again, and they are in downtown. So
That's exciting.
yeah.
We had this come up before when we were looking for a place, and we thought about doing a museum in a bus and taking it to the schools.
Okay.
And then it was brought up, it's like, why don't we get a railroad car
Oh.
and bring it up off on the siding, maybe down there on the backside by MFA, and turn that into a museum. I'm just throwing that out there. What would you think about that?
I mean, it depends on code, first of all, because they have weird things about it needs to be mobile or it's a permanent structure, and then it has to meet all these other codes with like size of bathroom and all that. So if you don't want that to happen, you got to look at all that. But anything that would bring more people and more interest to downtown is what we want. I mean, there's some really cool things that people are doing in other communities, like little business incubators by using a shipping container and turning it into like a little shop, and then they rotate it out every 4 to 6 months and put another one in there. And either, like, did you do good enough to rent a place? Go rent a building now. Or, oh, you didn't? It didn't work out? Bye. New business. You know?
There's a great photo of the train station that used to be right there by
Yes.
NFA.
Yeah.
And that's what we were, first was like.
That would be cool.
That would be cool to have that building there.
That would be cool.
Or a train, one or the other. So
That would be cool.
that was something that we talked about, besides putting placards around town, like this is where the water works, here's a little photo of it.
Right.
Yep, here's where the old, the water,
Magnetic
The
water.
magnetic well.
well, and
Yeah.
there's a little well.
That would be cool.
And put those around, and we, Gene and I went down to Waynesville, and they have one out there, and I asked them how much they cost. Well, they like, oh, we bought that 50 years ago.
Right.
So it's getting that
Bronzes
done.
are
They're all
expensive.
aluminum, and then they're
Oh,
painted.
okay. Oh, okay.
They're aluminum plaque. But there's other ones that are in national parks now that are cheaper than those big things that sit on a post. So, I guess who would have to prove that? That would be the city. We
Right.
have to show you what we want to put up. You put it in place. We pay for it or whatever.
Yeah. So that's just to start having conversations with, well, I don't know, me, I guess, and then I figure out who we're
That's what we're
talking to.
throwing it out.
We are kind of in a flux right now because of our administrator situation. Not that I'm salty about that or anything. I was at Main Street Capitol Day 2 weeks ago, and just ran into this lady who said she was, oh yeah, St. Joe, that's in my district. I was like, oh, you're from St. Joseph, huh?
Thanks.
I was like, I don't like you. Like, you still are city administrator. She just laughed and laughed. So, but we have a temporary person now, Ben DeClue. He was here before. He was the assistant city administrator, and then he was the interim administrator right before they hired Mike. So he's up on everything. He hasn't been gone that long. So he's back to fill in until they hire somebody. So, and that process is beginning, and I'm excited for the potential future. And I get to be part of those conversations, because I'm a director of a department, right? So just like tourism gets to be involved in electric department and all that stuff. So very exciting. But the future is great. Lebanon, honestly, you guys, it's growing. We are positioned well as people are leaving, especially after COVID, the big cities and looking for smaller communities. We have a great cost of living here. We have a great community. Our city offers more services than most other cities of our size. I mean, and we're doing great financially. So I'm just really excited for the future. I love this place. I'm 5th generation Laclede County, right? I am really, really excited for what's going to keep happening here. We're not like Buffalo, who, like, they didn't want the railroad at all. You know what I mean? They didn't want the interstate, they didn't want, you know what I mean? And we just keep innovating, you know? We got a railroad, close-ish, you know, we got Route 66, we got I-44. Like, we're staying up on things, so. Our community's awesome. I'm glad you guys are part of it. So, thank you for having me.
Thank you, very good.
There's appreciate Sarah coming. It is just a little bit after 7, I noticed. But I'm glad that she came and talked to us, and I think we learned some things that we probably didn't know. It's a long time ago when we first started this a couple of years ago. Me and David decided that there's 18 boards in Lebanon. It's hard to get around and talk to everybody.